Good afternoon, Rogers High School. My name is Mr. Smith, and I am the proud principal. And today we have the opportunity to take some time out and honor the words and the message of Martin Luther King Jr. His words and his message have been inspiring us for years. They need to continue to inspire us and help move us forward through the difficult times that we've been through, especially this past summer, but also through the difficult times that are still going to be ahead of us. And it's important that we at Rogers take time to acknowledge Dr. King. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And I want to challenge you for that. During these times, and they are very difficult times, with COVID and all of us not being here together at school, what are you doing for others? What are you doing for your community? What are you doing for your family? What are you doing for yourself? Very tough question to ask, but I challenge you, I challenge myself, I challenge all of us to continue to ask, what can we do for others? Whether it's lifting somebody up through a phone call, whether it's sending somebody a positive email, a positive instant message, what are we doing for others to help uplift us, to help us get through these very difficult times? Another question I ask is, have you given more than you've received? Think about that for a second. And giving doesn't mean money. Giving can be done in many ways. Right? As I said earlier, a phone call, a letter, a message, a simple thank you. Have you given more than you've received? So again, as we take time to honor the words of Dr. King, his legacy, his message, we still have a long way to go. And it would be ignorant to assume that we don't have a long way to go. But I know we can get there together as a Rogers community, as a Rogers staff, as a Rogers student body. Today we take time to celebrate the message of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his importance on our community, our society, our world, and I want to thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoy the rest of our video. Thank you.
The time is always right to do what is right. So having the common sense, having the moral beliefs and ethical beliefs to know what is right and based off what is wrong. And so, as we go through life and we come through these different dilemmas, there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And this encourages everybody, regardless of who's watching, who's doing this, for us to do the right thing.
It's a simple statement, but it's much harder to do than you might expect. It's always right to do the right thing. It might not be easy, but I can tell you from personal experience, it's not the times that you stood up to do the right thing that you regret. It's those times that you didn't stand up that will stay with you for the rest of your life.
I feel like whenever we're faced with situations or problems like that we're personally going through or the whole world is going through, the time is always right to do what is right in that situation, whether it's standing up for something that matters or standing up to somebody or confessing something or letting something happen. If something is the right thing to do, then it will always be the right thing to do.
During his time, he was educated and he had a background that allowed him a voice where he was able to look at his community and our country and see things that weren't so right. And not only did he have a voice, he was able to look at it, reflect on it, and then another key word, do something about it.
Founding fathers knew we aren't perfect. We've never been perfect, but our goal is to be better. And during this time in the 1960s with the civil rights movement, when MLK says these quotes, things are really bad. And guess what? Today, for a lot of people, things are still really bad. This still applies. It's still the time to do the right thing, to stand up, to make sure that we're standing up for everybody.
Sometimes you have to go against friends or go against family to do the right thing. And the more we're able to do that, the better I think as a society will be.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I heard that a long time ago from Martin Luther King, and it didn't ring true until I grew up. And now I look back and I realize how important that saying is.
One thing that I feel like MLK would have appreciated, even though he didn't get to live long enough to appreciate the idea behind it, was the idea of intersectionality. Everybody's lack of privileges, or the things that we have that separate us, are also the things that end up linking us together. We end up thinking about black and white footage of different events or beautiful speeches like we see MLK delivering from all sorts of different places. And people don't think about the fact that these are moments that are hitting us now, and that it's not just meant to be something that is a stagnant piece of history from decades past.
I heard a quote, and I can't remember where I heard it from or where the quote is from, but it goes like this. If the world is a boat and everyone has a seat in that boat, I'm in my seat. What if I start drilling holes in the bottom of my seat, allowing water to come in? If everyone did that, the boat would eventually sink. And that's kind of the way I think of injustice everywhere. If it is allowed to go on anywhere, it threatens all of us. So the importance of that really rings true to me. And it doesn't matter where I live. I used to have this very short-sighted view of if it didn't affect me or my home or my family, it kind of didn't bother me. But now I really see how important it is to be aware of everywhere and not just my surroundings.
Somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press.
Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. That the second you let someone take control of your own life, when you're supposed to be in control of your life starts to change for the worse and starts to approach its end.
As far as I can tell, this is paraphrased from a sermon that Dr. King gave the day after Bloody Sunday in March 1965. And Bloody Sunday was a big march from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama to protest the death of a Black man by Alabama state trooper, and also to try and earn voting rights. And it was violent and horrible. And one of the things that Dr. King said that he's actually quoted is, "A man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for that which is true." So I think he said this because it's easier to be silent. It's easier to not be a part of the nitty-gritty of working for change. It's easier to not challenge the people around us who are being racist or misogynist or xenophobic or homophobic or transphobic. It's easier to hide away and to keep our heads down and out of the fight.
What Martin Luther King wanted us to take from this quote is that we have to be the captain of our own ships and the captain of our lives. And I think how that applies now is we shouldn't let others control how our lives play out, or we shouldn't let those above us stop us from doing things such as taking roles in our government and controlling what goes on around us.
Stop your friends and your peers when they say things that are inappropriate. Don't let things slide, because each time you do, you're giving permission for it to continue.
Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
So in 1967, addressing the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. King said, "If you, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear." It's a feel-good quote, it really is. But contextually speaking, if we look at where does this come from? Who was he talking to? This speech was, where do we go from here? This is a nation that's been wrestling with the civil rights movement for years. Now, this quote is one that I see it a lot on social media, and it's sometimes out of context. If I'm being honest, it's sometimes out of context. And I think it's one of those that we can put up there, we can say, let's tie it up in a nice little bow and let's make it pretty and let's all just love each other and everything will be fine. And that's not what he was talking about.
It was a directive and a plea. A directive to stay the course, fighting for equal rights for African Americans. A directive to gather in peaceful protest, demanding equal rights. But it was also a plea to humanity to believe in the power of love.
Dr. King had seen incredible hate in his time, and he knew that hate will destroy us, that nothing good comes from hate. He was concerned, though, with justice and with truth and with a better world. He was concerned about brotherhood and sisterhood. And the love he was talking about, in fact, he says, not emotional bosh, which basically is not your Hallmark movie, rainbows and unicorns, feels so good love. He's talking about, as he described it, a strong and demanding love. This is the love that we have to choose. It's not the love that we necessarily feel. It's not that feel good. It's the love that's a choice that says, I'm going to put the needs of someone else above mine. I'm going to choose to love even though it's hard, even though that love is maybe not necessarily even deserved. And I guess when I see those quotes, and something that I think of when I read this quote from Dr. King is that to seek justice for others is an act of love.
I believe we are all put here for two reasons. One, to be loved, and two, to give love.
Without love, everything is meaningless. That love is the only answer, and that, in fact, he puts it, ultimately, the only answer to mankind's problems.
Forgiveness is not an occasional act, it is a constant attitude. Martin Luther King said this famous quote. It was part of a sermon in 1962 in Atlanta, Georgia. It was a 4-part series called Love in Action. Forgiveness is slow. Forgiveness is hard. Forgiveness has no time period, no finish line. And so sometimes it's a process of forgiving not only individuals, but maybe groups or a country, an oppression.
During that time, it wasn't easy to forgive what people said to you or did to you, but it was always something that was like in the back of your mind, because actions that people did or the things that people said, it's not easy to forget. It's not easy to just kind of brush off. So in the way that I kind of interpreted it, it was more of you kind of have to move forward in life.
During the time of segregation, he was just pretty much saying that instead of fighting the people that were against the change, and forgiving them and kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Accepting that they accepted their mistakes and are willing to move forward as people.
Every year in my American Studies class that I ask the first day question, why do we study history? Why is it important? Why are we sitting here and you got to take a year-long class? And I get a variety of answers. But the one that always strikes me the most is definitely we don't want to repeat history. We don't want to make the same mistakes that we've made twice or even 3 times for that.
Recently, with the Black Lives Matter movement that happened during the summer, we can never forget that. That was worldwide, in my opinion. That was huge, and just kind of living through that, you can never forget it.
I do believe that in history we are fighting the same fight. We're looking at the same things that happened in the 50s, in the 1960s, in the early 1900s. But at the same time, I'm hoping this generation will make an earmark, will make a spot in history that we've had a chance to overcome this. Because if you don't forgive, you could be bitter, you could be resentful, you could be hateful.
It just works its way through each decade, and you kind of just have to keep working on it and working on it.
I really believe that without forgiving, we really can't move forward in history, in life.
I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.